Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. I hope you're doing well today. In today's video, we take on part 4 of my ultimate Demon Lord Clan Boss guide. Now, if you haven't watched any of the first 3 parts, I highly recommend you do that before watching this video. So I'll put links up to those 3 videos. Part 1 is all about the Clan Boss mechanics, an explanation of the fight, the buffs and debuffs you might be looking for, and how to start in the early game. Part 2 is about the mid-game, progressing your Clan Boss team, getting the most value out of the champions you have, and learning about champions that you might want to look for future Clan Boss team development. We also talk about how to move up in the difficulty tiers into Brutal and towards Nightmare. In Part 3, we took on speed tuning basics and unkillable Clan Boss compositions. Now, don't worry too much if you are sort of reluctant to get into speed tuning. We take it easy, we start slow, we start with the basics, we do an explanation of why speed tuning is so important, and then we give you some unkillable Clan Boss team compositions to look into, and those have to be speed tuned. Don't worry if that feels like it's either not enough or even too much, because we're going to continue to step on into the Clan Boss calculator a little bit more today, get you a little bit more familiar with it, a little bit more comfortable with it, because today is part 4, and part 4 is all about stun targeting. Stun targeting is one of the most important aspects of speed tuning. You need to handle the stun somehow, whether you're using an unkillable comp or a killable comp, it doesn't matter. Stun targeting is essential to a properly speed tuned Clan Boss team. So I hope you've watched the other videos. I hope you're ready for this one. Let's get started. Okay, so let's have a quick refresher on speed tuning and unkillable teams. We just did that in the last video, but in case you haven't seen that in a couple of days, basically what's happening with the speed tune is we are choosing the speeds that our champions are running at relative to each other and relative to the boss, so that there's a rhythm to the progression of the fight that makes sure that all the buffs that we need up are up at the right moments. So you want to have your block debuffs buff up before the Clan Boss stuns one of your champions. To put it up afterwards isn't useful. So basically we can plan our team and all of the turns of our team in order to make sure that we get the optimal use of all of our skills without having to manual the fight, right? Because you could try that. You could try to manual the fight and get a better optimization of skills. But this is even better than manual, because not only is it something that you're going to be able to auto most of the way, but the speeds will make sure that you have the skills available for when you need them. Now, speed tuning works for unkillable or killable team compositions. In today's video, we're going to be talking about stun targeting, which is important for both compositions. But just a quick reminder about unkillable team compositions, because we're going to be speed tuning one of those today in the video. An unkillable composition is preferable to a killable composition in most cases because it's easier to build, because you only need one champion or maybe 2 champions who bring the correct buffs, and that's enough to get you 50 guaranteed turns against the Clan Boss. Now, having more turns would be better, but most teams come up short of 50 turns. So guaranteeing yourself 50 turns with only 1 or 2 champions getting you those 50 turns allows you to put a lot more DPS into the team and cause a lot more damage during those 50 turns than you would otherwise. And the 2 buffs we use to make an unkillable team composition are unkillable, that's why it's called an unkillable composition, and block damage. We don't really refer to block damage as a separate thing, we just call it an unkillable buff as well when we're discussing Clan Boss teams. So either one of those 2 buffs will work. And just to review the power of an unkillable team, you can see here my Ultra Nightmare team, who pulled down 125.59 million on 1 key. Obviously, there are some good champions here. You do not need these champions in order to 1 key Ultra Nightmare. For the top chest of Ultra Nightmare, you are trying to get just over 70 million, so 70.3 million is enough. In the previous video, we talked about different places where you could find unkillable speed comps, or even killable speed comps. And today we're going to go back to one of those places, and that is deadwoodjedi.com. Okay, here we are at Deadwood's site. Now, one of the things I want to mention about speed tunes that I haven't mentioned before is that there are different ratios of speeds that you can run your team at to become either unkillable or to have a killable comp that runs for a long time. So if you go over here and you hover over speed tunes, you're going to see these ratios: 1-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1 ratio, and 4-to-3 ratio. Okay, now these are speed ratios. So what this basically means, the first number of each ratio is how many turns your teams take for the second number, which is the number of clan boss turns the clan boss takes. So in a 1-to-1 ratio, your team goes once and the clan boss goes once. In a 2-to-1 ratio, your team goes twice and the clan boss goes once. And then obviously in a 3-to-1 ratio, you go 3 times and the clan boss goes once. There is one more ratio, which is a little bit more complex in terms of the numbering system, the math of it, but is actually relatively simple to accomplish, which is the 4-to-3 ratio. Now, each of these makes sense for a different reason. 1-to-1 is very simple. It's your basic speed tune, and it's going to allow you to be very consistent. You can predict when your skills are going to come up, and if you choose champions that have skill cooldowns that are on a 3-turn cooldown, then a 1-to-1 ratio can be very effective. And the reason that a 3-turn cooldown is important is because of that 3-turn cycle that the clan boss takes. His A1 is an AoE, his A2 is an AoE, and then his A3 is the stun, and then it cycles back to the beginning. So 3 turns, 3 cooldowns work really well. In order to maintain that predictability, you can also work at a 2-to-1 ratio. So having, again, a 3-turn cooldown on a 2-to-1 ratio means you're just getting back to those skills more frequently. If you go at a 3-to-1 ratio, you actually get your full cooldown, 3-turn cooldown, like Demytha's block damage buff. You get it every single clan boss turn. You're going 3 times and then the clan boss goes. So you use your ability and then you get 3 more turns. So your ability comes back and then the clan boss goes again. The 4-to-3 ratio is for champions who have 4-turn cooldown abilities. So for instance, Helicath has a block damage buff for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So running at 4-to-3 allows him to basically get that ability up once every rotation, or every cycle, I should say. So those are the most common ratios. There are other ratios you can run at, but these are the easiest to speed tune. So these are what most speed tunes try to accomplish. Now, the faster you go, the more often you're going to be able to hit the clan boss and the more damage you're going to do. So a 1-to-1 ratio is very difficult to get a 1-key Ultra Nightmare. You have to have very good gear and excellent champions. It's possible, but difficult. A 2-to-1 ratio is much, much easier. A 4-to-3 ratio is pretty good. And a 3-to-1 ratio is extremely fast and you're going to get a lot of damage in. That doesn't mean a 3-to-1 ratio is necessarily better than a 2-to-1 ratio. It depends on the champions you have. But I just wanted to give you that little overview of what the ratios mean. And you can see if you pick something like a 3-to-1 ratio team, you're going to go ahead and find tunes with extremely high speed requirements. So here we're going to look at Myth Hair just briefly, and you can see we have a Demytha with over 300 required speed, and then most of the champions are above 200 speed with only 1 DPS at 195. This is a lot faster than a 1-to-1 ratio team. So if I picked another team that was 1-to-1 ratio, you're going to see that the speeds are much, much slower. So we'll pick this Krisk slow tune, and you'll see here we've got no speeds over 200, much less 300, and we have several speeds in the mid 100s, 137 to 166. So if you are earlier in the game and you don't have the gear to get up to speeds over 200 or even up to 300 on a champion, you're going to want to look at slower tunes. Now, there are some champions who can help you reach those speeds more easily. Any speed aura champion that works in the speed tune can help. So if you have someone like Hai Khotun, who is giving you turn meter fill and a speed buff, plus a speed aura, that kind of champion can help speed up your entire team. Most players, when they're going for their first Ultra Nightmare team, pick either a 4-3 tune or a 2-1 tune. So if you go here and you look at the 2-1 ratio teams, you'll find that most of those are going a little bit slower than the 3-1 teams. They're still going pretty fast. So you still have speeds here in the mid 200s. But some of them will include champions like Deacon Armstrong or Seeker, or Hai Khotun, or other turn meter fillers that are going to allow you to sort of save on the speed requirements for your various champions. So for instance, if you had a Seeker and you wanted to get to a 2-to-1 ratio team, you could go over here and look at Seeker. And then these are going to be the toons that have Seekers in them. Let's go ahead and pick, let's pick Cat Eater here. And here you see that even though Maneater is running at 255, because we have that Seeker on this composition, most of the other speeds are more reasonable. So again, this is going to be running at probably a 2-to-1. Seeker himself may be running at a 3-to-1. I don't know about this composition specifically, but in some compositions, that's how it works. So you can even do that, where you will have some champions run at 3-to-1, some at 2-to-1, some at 4-to-3, and you can mix them all together, and that speed toon can work. Now, for today's video, we want to really discuss the stun target. And the stun target is important because the stun target can throw off a speed toon. If the wrong champion gets stunned, say your Seeker got stunned in that previous composition, all of a sudden that would remove the turn meter fill on that turn. Everybody would slow down and they would all miss their required buffs or debuffs. So that's why a stun target is important. By directing the stun to a specific target, you can predict which target's going to get hit, how that's going to affect your speed toon, if at all, and that will allow you to keep the composition in tune. Now, there are several ways you can deal with the stun, whether that's cleansing or using a block damage buff or just tanking it. But regardless of that, you want to know who that stun is going to land on. So for today's video, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take you through a speed toon. And now this is the Budget Maneater Unkillable team. It is the most famous speed toon probably out there because it's the most accessible one. I've mentioned it before. For this team composition, all you need is one Maneater and one Painkeeper. If you have those two champions, an epic and a rare, they're both void, but if you have those two champions, you can put together this composition. You'll notice that the speed requirements here are not insane, and this is capable of a 2-key Ultra Nightmare, maybe even a 1-key if you had the right DPS, but generally this isn't moving fast enough to 1-key Ultra Nightmare. So you could get a 1-key Nightmare out of this and a 2-key Ultra Nightmare, or maybe a 3-key Ultra Nightmare, but it is a speed toon that people usually try to get to early in their account or earlier in their account. So if you're still in the mid game or, maybe the late mid game, this is a team composition you could look at. But in order to get this to work, you need to understand stun targeting. And that is actually the trickiest part of this team composition. So I'm going to run you through the calculator to show you the speed toon, make sure you understand how that looks. And then we're going to talk about all of the aspects that go into the clan boss picking a stun target so that you can control what target, what champion is actually going to get hit with that stun. Now, before you do anything else, when you come to one of these team composition pages, you want to go ahead and look at all of the important considerations. So some of them are not full auto. So in this particular case, you will have to manual some skills before you can auto it. It is different for Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, and Brutal, because remember, each of those clan bosses runs at a different speed. And so the speed toon has to be adjusted for that. The composition will work for all 3 difficulty levels, but you do have to know how to start that fight off properly for the difficulty level that you're attempting. In addition, if we go down here to the bottom, we have a description of something that we need to worry about for today's video and in general, which is the HP of the stun target should be the highest of the team, but not more than 125% of Painkeeper's HP. So when we start to get into figuring out our team composition, we also have to worry about the HP pools and defense pools of our champion, not just the speed. It says here, Painkeeper should be the second highest HP, and then it has some additional notes that you could read through if you are trying to tune this up. Now, at the very bottom of this page, you actually have links to the calculator with these teams preloaded into the calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Ultra Nightmare here. And it is going to bring me to an example version of this team. Now, the champions here in the left-hand column are the ones that were added. But remember, the only requirements are Maneater and Painkeeper. Right? So as long as you have those 2 champions, the other champions are just examples. Now, you want to swap those champions out for the ones that you intend to use. So I actually built my own version of this calculator, and basically I just swapped out the champions. And I added my Celiac, Priest Ornn, Anax, and Eurogrim. I'm going to talk about why I picked these specific champions. You don't have to pick these specific champions, but we're going to be talking about, again, the stun target here. And so I picked these champions to illustrate some specific characteristics of how stun targeting works. So don't worry about all the bars and stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit. Right now, let's go talk about stun targeting. So I'm still here on deadwoodjedi.com, and this is an article on how the stun targeting works. So I'm just going to blow that up a little bit so that you can read it a little bit more easily. Okay, so this is a good starting point for understanding the stun mechanic. So you can go ahead and read this on your own, pause the video if you want, or go to the website and read this article when you have a chance. But I'm also going to walk you through all of the different considerations because this doesn't cover 100% of the scenarios. And we want to make sure that you completely understand how stun targeting works when you go and speed tune your first composition. So when it is the A3 turn for the clan boss, when that stun is coming, he will do a calculation. The first and most important calculation that he'll do is, can he one-shot somebody? That's the question he's going to ask. Can I one-shot one of these champions? And if he can one-shot one of the champions, he's going to pick that champion regardless of anything else. So the ability to kill a champion is the top priority. After that, if the clan boss determines that he cannot kill any of your champions, now he's got to decide who to pick on. So the first most likely target is going to be any negative affinity champion. So if you have a magic affinity boss, that boss is going to pick on a spirit affinity champion, assuming there is one on the team. If there is no weak affinity champion on the team, the clan boss will pick a neutral affinity champion. So that could be a void champion, or it could be a magic champion because the boss is magic affinity. The boss will never pick a force affinity champion unless the first question is true, right? That he can one-shot that champion. Or there is a second scenario. If all of the champions are force affinity champions, then he has to pick a force affinity champion as the stun target. But he will pick any other affinity over a force affinity champion because he is weak against force affinity champions. Okay, now there are some other considerations. Let's say there are more than one weak affinity champions, or there are several neutral affinity champions who the clan boss is going to choose amongst. How does that clan boss decide? Well, the next question is, what buffs do these champions have on them? Because the clan boss likes to avoid specific buffs. There are 4 buffs that the clan boss will avoid. The first is increased defense. So if you have an increased defense up on a champion, but not on a different champion, that different champion becomes more attractive as a stun target. Again, assuming that the affinities are equal. Remember, affinity is more important than this. Another buff that the clan boss avoids is block damage. So that's the second one. Again, if it's on everybody, it doesn't matter, right? Because if it's on everybody, everybody has the same status. So we are looking for champions that have different statuses. So if everybody has a block damage, it's like nobody has a block damage. But if only one champion or 2 champions have a block damage, the clan boss will pick somebody else. Same with counterattack. And the final buff is actually the steadfast mastery from the support tree. It's the one that gives you extra health, the one on the left side, in the left column, right? So if you pick that, you can actually make somebody less attractive to the clan boss. Now, there's something that you have to worry about with steadfast mastery, and that is how many of your champions have it. So if you want one champion to really not be picked on for the stun target, one way you can increase their chances of not being chosen is to give them the steadfast mastery, as long as nobody else has that mastery. If every champion on your team has the mastery, it's the same thing as no champions having that mastery. Okay, so if the boss can't one-shot somebody, they move to affinity. If there is either more than one weak affinity or no weak affinities, then the clan boss has to choose amongst the next best targets. And in that next step, we'll consider all of the buffs that are up on the team. If everybody has the same buffs, then they will go to the next one. Who has the lowest percentage max HP remaining on the team? Now, this is kind of strange because the actual HP, like the health pool points, that doesn't matter. It's about percentage. So if you had somebody who had 100,000 points of HP and another champion who had 30,000 points of HP. But the 100,000 was down to like 70,000. So they're missing 30% of their HP pool. And the other champion is at full health. The clan boss will pick the champion with the 70,000 HP pool. Seems strange, right? Because based on the first question, you're looking to one-shot a champion. But if you can't one-shot a champion, the clan boss is basically looking for the next weakest champion. And the way it figures that out is how much of their HP are they missing? How much of their pool are they missing? So if you're missing 20% of your pool and nobody else is missing any HP, you become the weakest target, even if your HP pool is twice as big as everybody else's. I know that doesn't make 100% sense, but that's the logic of the clan boss. Okay, now assuming nobody is missing any HP, everybody has 100% HP, that comes off the board as well. And so now with no one shot available, with either no negative affinities or all negative affinities or whatever you have, if you have more than one potential affinity target, and with everybody having the same buffs and with everybody having the same percentage of HP, now we go in terms of team order. So the leader will take the shot before the next person in line, before the next person in line, and all the way on down the line. Now, this is also true for anybody who has passed all of the other levels of consideration, or whenever a consideration is made. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have two negative affinity champions. Those could both be potential targets, right? So let's say the clan boss is force affinity and you have two magic affinity champions. Either one of those could be the stun target. So the buffs get considered. They have the same buffs, so there's no decision there. The max HP gets considered, but they have the same max HP. Now the team position of those two champions becomes relevant. So even if neither one is the leader, even if they are in positions 4 and 5, position 4 will be chosen over position 5. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot going on there, and it may feel a little bit tricky, and even that explanation and even this written out may not be enough for you to feel really confident in figuring out how to actually create a stun target. So we're actually going to go to this stun target calculator right here. There is a link to it on this page, so you can go and find it. But I have actually added it right here. This is created, I don't know who created this actually, but whoever did it is in Google Docs. You have to make a copy of it, and then you can manipulate the cells with numbers, and then you can actually use it as the calculator. Okay, so just so you know, this calculator has been built around the budget unkillable clan boss team. So that is the speed tune we are using. And as you can see, oops, not that one, that one, this is the team that I have used. I have picked Ornn, Anax, and Eurogrim to fill out my team. And so I have entered them here into the calculator. Now, the calculator doesn't really work perfectly for any other speed tunes or any other team compositions, but you can still use it to understand the idea of how a clan boss chooses a stun target. So what I have done here is I have entered in fictional HP totals and fictional defense totals. So remember, the clan boss is going to pick weak affinities first. Now, Ornn and Anax are both spirit affinity. Okay, so here is the team composition that I've put together. It is Man-Eater in the lead with Painkeeper in position 2. Ornn is a poisoner. He is in position 3. Anax is a poisoner with some debuffs, weaken and decreased defense. He is in position 4. And then Eurogrim here is our stun target in position 5. So this, you can see I haven't actually built out this team. I haven't speed tuned it, but I just wanted you to see the affinities here and how you would set them up on the team sheet. Now I'm actually going to take you through the calculator here very quickly, just so you can see the way this works. If you look at Eurogrim's speed, he was running at 115 speed. That is incredibly slow. But the way that you make this speed tune work is by creating a slow boy stun target. That is Deadwood Jedi's term for this stun target. So if we look closer here, what we're trying to do is, let's get to this rotation down here. Man-Eater will put up his A3. Now his A3 is his unkillable buff, and he'll do it at the very end of the first turn before the clan boss does the first AoE, right? So Man-Eater's buffs go up right here. They are green, so you can see that they are being applied. If they are blue, that means they have already been applied and are up. If they are faded blue, that means they are dropping off at that turn. That turn goes and then they drop off. So right here, you can see that the unkillable buff and the block debuffs buff go up right here at the end. And remember, those go up for 2 turns. Now, everybody on the team takes a turn after that buff. So that buff goes up, the clan boss hits an AoE, nobody dies because everybody has unkillable. That buff remains up for everybody's next turn, right? Everybody takes a turn here, but remember that buff stays up for 2 turns. So then the clan boss AoE hits again. Now for Spirit Affinity, this is the attack that's going to drop the slow onto your team. But because everybody has the block damage, the block debuffs buff, nobody actually gets the slow. So that's very important. Now, if you look at the third attack of the cycle, this is the stun cycle, right? The stun happens at the end of this turn. You'll notice that Eurogrim doesn't go. Eurogrim is going so slow that he's only going twice per cycle. So the clan boss will go 3 times. Everybody else is going faster, but Eurogrim's going so slow he only goes twice. So as you can see, the buffs, the unkillable buffs and the block debuffs buffs are all falling off here. That's why they're faded. They are all coming off. And by the end, Painkeeper doesn't have any of these buffs, nor does anybody else. But one champion still has them, and that's Eurogrim. Eurogrim has them from the previous turn. He hasn't gone yet. They're not going to drop off until he goes. So he remains unkillable, and he remains with a block debuffs buff up. So he is not going to get stunned, and he is not going to get killed. So if we can get the clan boss to stun Eurogrim, then our entire team has survived into the next clan boss cycle. And you can see the next cycle repeats the exact same pattern. At the end of the first turn, just before the clan boss does his first AoE, Maneater puts up his buffs. During the second turn, everybody has those buffs up, so the clan boss does not land any debuffs, including that slow. And then during the third turn, Eurogrim is so slow he doesn't go. So if the clan boss stuns Eurogrim, everybody else is safe. And that is how this fight will progress through 50 turns. So even though it's an unkillable team composition, in fact, during the third part of this cycle, during the stun part of this cycle, only one champion has the unkillable buff up, but he's the only one who needs it. Now, if the clan boss hits anybody else, that champion will be stunned, potentially throwing the team out of tune, or that champion will be killed, absolutely throwing the team out of tune. So we must land the stun on Eurogrim. That is our only choice. Obviously, we could pick a different champion to be the slow boy, but my point is whoever the slow boy is, in this case, Eurogrim, must receive the stun. So now let's go look at the stun target calculator. So I have entered all of the team here, and again, I have put in fictional HP and fictional defenses. This stun calculator kind of works for other team compositions, but it's specifically made for this team composition. So we're just going to use it as a way to explain how the stun targeting works in practice. So we've had the description. Now we're actually going to see it work. So if you remember, there were some details at the end of Deadwood Jedi's description about this tune that we want to account for. So let's go back and look at that. And right here it says the HP of the stun target should be the highest on the team, but not more than 125 of PK's HP, and PK should be the second highest HP. Okay, so we're going to go here, and you can see this is the result of the stun target. Right now, Maneater is the stun target, and it's red because that's bad. That will throw the team out of tune. So what the details have told us is that Painkeeper needs to be the second highest HP on the team. So let's go ahead and add 2,000 HP to our Painkeeper. So she is now got the most HP on the team. And as you can see, the stun target has changed over here in the right-hand column. And now Painkeeper is going to be pulling a lot of the stuns. Neither Maneater nor Painkeeper can ever be the stun target. But we just learned that we also need the stun target to have the most HP on the team, but not more than 125% of Painkeeper. So we're going to just add 10% or so of Painkeeper's HP onto Eurogrim. So if she's at 32,000, let's just add 3,000 to that, and we'll put Eurogrim at 35,000. And all of a sudden, you'll see the stun target has changed. Now, the reason the stun target has changed is because we know that all of those decisions are being made. By the way, this stun calculator, the stun target calculator, does not account for auras, buffs, masteries, affinities, or crits from the clan boss. So what that means is, since we know that Ornn and Anax are spirit affinity, this particular calculation will only work for spirit affinity, for force affinity, because spirit is strong against force affinity, or void affinity, where everybody is neutral. It will not work for magic affinity, because remember, in the hierarchy of decisions, a weak affinity champion is high priority. So Ornn and Anax would both be high priority for a magic clan boss. And so Eurogrim, we could not force Eurogrim to be the stun target in that case. So this speed tune, this particular speed tune, this version of this speed tune, will not work for magic clan boss. There is a way you could change that. You could find a stun target who is weak to the magic clan boss, and you could make them the stun target. So if I added a third spirit affinity champion here, I could potentially make it work. But with Eurogrim, who is going to be neutral affinity to the magic clan boss, I can't make it. But for now, let's stick to the other affinities. So imagine that this is void affinity or spirit affinity or force affinity, and it'll work for any of those. So now what we've done here is we've added that additional HP onto Eurogrim to try to pull attention away from Painkeeper, who can't be stunned. And it's worked. Eurogrim is now the stun target from turn 3 on. But we need Eurogrim to be the stun target basically immediately, right? Neither Maneater nor Painkeeper can ever afford to take a stun if we want this composition to be speed tuned. So another thing that we can do here is we can start to lower the defense of Eurogrim or increase the defense of Maneater, or both. The less damage Maneater takes, the less likely he is to be chosen as the stun target. Remember, Maneater and Eurogrim are the same affinity. They're both void. Likewise, if Eurogrim takes more damage, then he's going to be weaker and he's going to be closer to dead with a higher HP pool, and therefore he'll be prioritized. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add, say, 400 defense onto Maneater, and you'll notice that has changed something. Now Ornn becomes the first target. We don't necessarily like that either. This isn't awful. If we had Ornn as the first stun target, Ornn is just a damage dealer. That would not detune the speed tune, right? That wouldn't break the speed tune. But we still need to get Maneater completely off the board. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start dropping Eurogrim's defense. Let's get it down to 1800 and see what happens. Nothing. All right, let's go ahead and drop it down to 1600. Let's see what happens. All right, now Eurogrim has taken the target from Ornn, but we're still not all the way there. So let's go ahead and give Maneater another 100 defense. And let's take another 100 away from Eurogrim. And all of a sudden it clicks. So this is the magic formula. Now, again, you don't have to have these specific numbers. They are kind of made up numbers, but I'm just showing you that you want to follow the directions that deadwoodjedi.com has given you for this speed tune. You know, if you want to direct the stun to the slow boy, that's the intended input stun target here, right? The champion running at 115 speed or whatever. You need to make sure they have a high HP pool and a small defense total. And that's one of the reasons why I picked Eurogrim for this role. And I'll show you why back in the game. Okay, so here is Eurogrim's champion page. And as you'll notice, he has an HP pool of over 19,000. That's pretty high for an epic. So getting his HP high is going to be relatively easy. Simultaneously, he has a defense of 1145. That's actually decent. He's a support and he's supposed to be a little bit survivable. So what you want to make sure is you focus any gear that gives HP percentage or flat HP, and you don't allow too many defense percentage rolls into the substats. Likewise, remember, he needs to run very slowly at 115 or so speed, and he starts at a base of 102. So that could be a little tricky. Definitely no speed boots for this guy. You can actually potentially leave gear off of this champion. As long as you hit the speed total, the HP pool, and the defense you want, you don't care about anything else. we'd like some accuracy on this guy because he is a poisoner. He places poisons. So try to reach the accuracy total if you're using Eurogrim specifically. But again, this is an unkillable composition. So you don't need this champion to be very powerful. In fact, you could run him at 4 stars. If he's level 40 and you can get to the totals that you need, then great. He's unkillable. It doesn't matter. Now, as you try to perfect your speed tune, you may have to enter the different HP values here. So let's say I dropped Ornn down to 25,000 HP, and let's say Anax had 22,000 HP, and all of a sudden I can see Anax is going to take that first stun. But again, that's not going to break the tune. The champions who can't take the stuns are Maneater and Painkeeper. Everybody else can take at least 1 stun. After this, we want Eurogrim to be the focus because remember, he's going to be the only one who's going slow enough to have that block debuffs buff up and that unkillable up during the clan boss's stun. So even though you could probably get away with 1 or maybe even 2 stuns on your DPS before this comes into tune, by the time you're into maybe the 3rd stun, you want to make sure that you are running in tune with that speed tune. So now one other thing I want to show you about the clan boss calculator before we leave here is that you need to enter all of the data that you can about these champions. And you have to also make sure that you include the AI programming in the game. So the first part of this is including all of the data. So when you go to the speed field here and you're entering the speed, it will also ask you for sets. And you want to go ahead and say what sets you're using. So let's say that the Maneater is using 2 speed sets. I would select that. And let's say he also has the Lore of Steel Mastery. You want to put that up. Now, the reason that you want to do that is because you can see the true speed changes. This is also true if you have a speed aura. So for instance, if you were running Eurogrim as the speed lead, you would get a 20% speed aura, and that would change everybody's speed and it would change the tune. So you would have to lower the actual speeds, the build speeds of the champion, right? This field here is the build speed. That's the speed that you see on the champion's page in game. But the true speed is the speed that calculates everything else, all of the gear, all of the masteries, and any speed aura. So the true speed is the speed you need for the tune, not the build speed. The build speed can be whatever it is. But in order for this to work, what we need to have here is we need to have no speed aura. So once we have no speed aura, you can see this works just fine. Any speed aura probably, as soon as you get to 2%, it will break the speed tune. And if you want to know how I know that, it's because you can see that the turns are changing. Right? And so once the turns start changing, basically that's telling you that the speed tune is broken. It is possible that you have some flexibility in these speeds. So for instance, I might be able to get Maneater to go a little faster. Yeah, as I'm speeding him up, the speed tune has not broken. But there will be a point where it breaks. So at 265, at 264, it's still in tune. At 265, it is broken. Okay, so I'm going to go back down to wherever I was. It was like 255, 250. But again, you want to enter in the sets for every single champion. So you go to their speed box, you go ahead and enter the set. So let's say she's using 1 speed and she does not have Lore of Steel. And then you go to Myceliac Priest Ornn and you do the same thing and you add all of that. So this is just going to make sure that your speed tune actually works for the gear that you're wearing and the masteries that you're using. Remember to avoid any masteries or gear sets that affect turn meter. So anything that gives you extra turn meter, you want to discard that because that's going to throw off a speed tune. Okay, so no relentless gear, no reflex gear, no masteries that give you extra turn meter fill when the buffs that you apply wear off. Nothing like that. You can't use any of those things. Relentless on a DPS sometimes works, but you have to be careful with that. So I would recommend you don't use it at first until you understand what you're doing. Also, any champions that have passives that give them extra turn meter, those are trickier to speed tune, and those won't fit into these pre-built speed tunes unless the description actually tells you how to do it. That can also be true for champions with extra turn mechanics unless those champions are specified by the speed tune. Okay, so that is it for stun targeting and speed tuning in an Unkillable. or even a killable clan boss team. Remember, a stun target in a killable clan boss team is also a great idea. By dropping that stun on a particular champion, you can control the flow of the tune and make sure that the team doesn't get detuned, basically, doesn't fall out of tune, that tune doesn't get broken, and you're going to get the maximum number of turns that you can. So you can always go to this page. If you don't remember, you can obviously come back to the video as well. But the first thing is, can your champion be one shot? The second is, are they weak affinity? If they are weak affinity, is there more than one weak affinity champion? Because if so, then the other aspects come into play. If there are no weak affinity champions and everybody is neutral, if anybody's strong, they're not in the running. But if everybody is neutral, everybody remaining is neutral, then also the other questions come into play. So the first one of those is, do we have these buffs up? So if I have 3 Void champions out there and I want to make sure one's not going to be picked on, I might want to give them the Steadfast Mastery. That's certainly something that you can do. But again, remember, don't give it to everybody, because if you give it to everybody, it's the same as if nobody had it. The next part is, who has the lowest HP percentage remaining? And remember, that is based on their own individual HP pool. So the bigger the pool, the further a champion will be away from death. But also that means that you have sort of more leeway and they can become the stun target by having more HP rather than less. Seems strange, but that's what you want. The more HP a champion has with the less defense, the more damage they're going to take, even though they're further away from death. And then finally, remember team order, right? If everybody is equal, the champion who qualifies for being stun target, who is furthest from the back, who is closest to the front, that is going to be the stun target. Go ahead and click on that link, play around with this stun calculator. It'll help you understand the mechanics of your team. It will also help you check if the team that you've built has the proper stun target. Remember that affinity matters, and that doesn't calculate here in the calculator, so you have to do that manually. Okay, that is it for this video. I hope this helps you feel a little bit more confident about trying out a speed tune, whether that's an unkillable composition or a killable composition. Remember how important stun targeting is. Watch this video again. Go use the resources that we talked about. Make sure you learn how to properly direct the stun to the champion that you want hit. And then when all is said and done, you'll be able to step up to even more and more difficult speed tunes like this one that I did here. And all of a sudden you'll have a chance to just go ahead, click that quick battle, get a 1 key result on every difficulty of the Demon Lord. 148 million there. It took me 10 seconds. Trust me, the speed tune took me like 20 hours. But my point is, I learned how to speed tune on that budget unkillable team. And then I went and stepped up to an even better team based on the champions that I had. And even though that took me a while to figure out, once I did figure it out, I realized I could use that clan boss calculator to create an infinite number of good speed tunes, basically, based on all of the champions that people have. There are thousands of potential speed tunes out there. Go use the HH optimizer to find some that maybe aren't on Deadwood Jedi's site. Start messing around with the clan boss calculator. Try to get into it, see it as a fun opportunity. But if you're still stressed about speed tuning, don't worry, because I have one more clan boss video coming, and it is all about the clan boss calculator. So we will design and create, explore a completely new speed tune that I've never done before, and we're going to do it from scratch. So we're going to take you through all of those steps. We're going to work with hopefully we're going to work with a player, maybe somebody else besides me. I'm not 100% sure if we're going to be able to pull that off with the scheduling, but we're either going to show you a brand new speed tune that I am doing, or we're going to show you a brand new speed tuning that maybe somebody else is doing using the methods we've outlined in the first 4 parts of our clan boss series. So if you don't want to miss that video, please subscribe to the channel so you can get a notification. Also remember to like this video. Also consider joining our Discord community. I've been Colred. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you in another video very soon.